Why does Santa have 3 gardens? So he can ho ho ho. What's going on, YouTube? Today we're going to break down some additional comments from the developers. Now, these ones are not related to the power outages or the DDoSes or anything like that. This ones are focused towards Update 44, Cyrodiil being play tested, updated, as well as Overland content. So I wanted to break down those developer responses. A lot of you guys have been interested in those videos recently. I didn't quite think that there would be as much interest, but hopefully I provide an additional perspective as somebody that has been able to speak with them on different occasions. And that leads me to an interesting point here. And feel free to skip this rant below, but I feel important to put this at the beginning because anytime I talk about what the developers are saying, people will say that, oh, you're just defending, you're just being overly positive because you love ZOS or whatever. I just want to push back and say, no, it does not matter the program that I'm in. I was not in the program for 3 years, and I have kept the same vibes in all my YouTube videos. I keep the vibe of something might be bad, but I'm going to highlight what could be done to improve it. And it's because from 8 to 4:30, Monday through Friday, I have to deal with social work issues. So if somebody, for example, is homeless, I don't sit there and go, man, being homeless sucks. That's not productive. Saying, okay, you're homeless, but you have a good credit score. You have a good work history. We can use these things to make this situation better. And that's the same style that I do for YouTube videos. So please don't associate any opinions that I may or may have based on external factors that you think that you may know, because the only person in my head are the multiple personalities that I have. And for listening to my long rant, here's a quick kitty cameo. And so here's the big update regarding the Update 44 as well as some other PvP conversations. This is from the community manager, Jessica. They say, hey all, we wanted to give you a short update on some fixes and improvements we have in progress for PvP Battlegrounds following Update 44, as well as respond to just a bit of your feedback. First, we wanted to touch upon the Update 44 live stream. Sometimes we try new things and they don't land the way we planned. We take these experiences, learn from them, and move forward with the goal of applying those learnings to and making the next time better. Part of that process includes listening to our community feedback and taking that into consideration as we plan future events. We also want to acknowledge that we did set the Update 44 live stream VOD to unlisted on Twitch. While no one on the stream did or said anything wrong, we were seeing an increase in abusive comments and harassment towards our developers as a result, and decided to do what was right by them. That said, we recognize we should have mentioned this all to you and the action when we did it and why. And this is basically the Streisand effect of, for those of you who don't know, Barbra Streisand had a photo of her house posted online. It got like 10, 20 views. It was like talking about erosion. And then she sued the photographer to take the photo off the internet. And then the photo went from viewed by like a couple people to millions of people. And then they now associated it with them. So when you kind of try to silently do something to take away the spotlight from something, you generally just put more emphasis on that thing. But here's where we get to the juicy part. Going back a bit earlier this year, we have seen some of you ask what became of the Cyrodiil testing we did. While we did post a short post-test follow-up, and they link it here, we recognized that we could have provided a bit more detail. Ultimately, the test, a stress test really, was to measure game performance and overall player experiences in Cyrodiil when we raised the population cap closer to what it was at launch. It was a what's possible test. The results of that test were valuable, and we have informed decisions we've been having since about, then what are the next steps? Ultimately, with how much the game has grown and changed in the last 10 years, just raising the cap to what it was at launch does not result in the play experience we want. Some larger changes will need to get us there. More on that very soon. And isn't that an interesting phrasing? How they're talking about the fact that they can't just increase the player pop in Cyrodiil, but they're looking at doing some other things to Cyrodiil. And this also boils back to the video I made a while ago, which was, when is Cyrodiil going to get updated? And it's interesting that they end that paragraph there. More on that soon. And it doesn't seem like a Cyrodiil update would just be, here's a player, cap increase. I don't know what they will do. We have talked about all sorts of things on stream, and I don't want to devolve into what we would update to Cyrodiil. But I told everybody, when they did the hardware update in 2023, that likely they were going to start doing this stuff. And you can see they were play testing Cyrodiil, how stress tests and different things. Because obviously 10 years ago, they were on, 2013 hardware, but there were also very few sets that did really anything. We also had veteran levels back then, not all these champion points. And it was, the game environment was very different. Um, so what they will do with the population cap, I'm not entirely certain, but this is definitely the most exciting update, especially because they say more on that very soon. And you know what's soon? We have the developers' letter that comes out next week, I believe, and then in January we start getting our teasers for 2025. Next up, on to the present and the update 44 PvP Battlegrounds changes. Since launched update 44, we have seen a significant increase in PvP Battleground participation. This was one of our primary goals for the Update 44 PvP Battlegrounds changes. We wanted to streamline the overall Battlegrounds experience in ESO and make it more fun, easier to hop into and enjoy the structure to understand, and generally make them more accessible for all our players. We acknowledge that some of our players had expressed enjoying the previous three-sided format more, and we continue to monitor feedback pair with in-game data. We're not planning any other major changes to ESO PvP Battlegrounds in the near future. Rather, we'll be focused on addressing some of the main points outside of the general personal preferences between the three-sided versus the two-sided format. And these general fixes and improvements are continuing to investigate cases where battleground matches still sometimes will start when the team is less than full. This is a high priority. Also, too, there were conversations about balancing teams and being able to start with less people and trying to figure all that out. And also improvement to MMR matchmaking logic. This, I think, is actually a really big one. I don't know the answer to this because most of you will know if you go into a battleground, especially when MMR resets, that a bunch of things will be all over the place. Your team will be very unbalanced, and trying to fix that, I think, is going to be very important. My feedback is, maybe you should have people queue as basically healers, because I think sometimes if you have a 4v4 without a healer, it's a very different experience versus if you do. There are so many things that you could do. There were conversations about moving the relics, adding an additional capture the relic. There's so many conversations about doing this. But the reason that I think, before devolving this into what I would change for Battlegrounds conversation, is most players that come to my live streams or comment on my videos love Battlegrounds over Cyrodiil. And a lot of people don't understand why that is. And the answer is actually relatively straightforward. If you're brand new to ESO and I just threw you into Cyrodiil and I said, go PvP, buddy, you'd be like, what? Where? How? What do I do? What do I go do? Where's all the conflict? How do I know where I should go? Are people going to invite me to a group? I don't have a lot of mount speed. How do I get around that? So there's all these obstacles. So really, your first PvP experience should be in a battleground. And it's important to make the Battlegrounds format good for new players because it is that stepping stone. If you want to see more people in Cyrodiil, you start by getting them into Battlegrounds. You get them confident with, okay, I'm not getting blown up immediately. I can practice people at my skill level. And, I could take that knowledge and then, watch some guides, join some groups, get up with some players, and go to Cyrodiil. I love Cyrodiil. I will stream it very often. I will go there often off stream. It's a fun place. It's chaotic. I love it. But if you're a brand new player, you probably don't want as much of that chaos because you're going to be like, this is not fun for me because I don't comprehend what's going on. Are we winning? Are we losing? What should I be doing? It can be a little bit overwhelming. I do think that Cyrodiil does need updated tutorials. I'm excited to hear that they're play testing and, a lot of changes will be coming soon. But until then, I do think Battlegrounds was a good decision to update, and I hope that they can get the MMR fixed because obviously you want brand new players going against other brand new players. You don't want them going against people who were just experienced players on their brand new characters. So, for example, if I logged into a Warden that I haven't played since the reset, I'll be put likely with people of low MMR, which could be very unbalanced because that Warden will probably clean up pretty consistently, which is where you get those screenshots on Facebook where people are like 50-0. And I think that's a little bit of logic that they need to work on, but that's what they're talking about when it comes to matchmaking. So test discussions, investigations, and promise, been there, done that. What about some actions and executions? Comments like that, perfectly fine. But also, too, I would start suggesting things. Like, a lot of people I have been talking to, like, hey, Cyrodiil is going to be updated in the future. That's a given. What do you want to see? Because if you're just saying update something, it could be updated in a way that you don't like, I'm not saying that they're going to make it into like a PvE zone or where you have to like flag to be enabled for PvP. I'm not saying they're going to do anything wild like that, but on a conceptual level, a lot of you guys don't know exactly what you want. But if you can think of specific things that you think would be good, I'm a big advocate for increasing the population. Because I remember those early days of PvP, it was just unbridled chaos with hundreds and hundreds of people. It was the coolest PvP experience you could have. But I'm assuming that most people want to see more than just a population increase. I assume. Especially because I don't know what would happen to the map. Like, did they just re-put the cap back to where it was? Like, do they then need to add more keeps? Do they then need to make the land bigger? Do they need to make the walls stronger? Does Siege need to do more weapons? Do you need more sets that, combat, larger groups of people, like in the same ways that like Vicious Death does? Like, how do you now take a balanced and refined PvP mode and just, triple the players essentially? You might need to do quite a bit of things. So if you have suggestions, I encourage you to put them on the forum, specifically the forum that we just looked at, and I will link that one in the description below, because I think specific feedback, and I actually passed on your guys' feedback. So when Battlegrounds was updated as hey, this is the new marquee feature, when I went to San Diego, I went to Grey Host and I said, good people of Grey Host, what would you like to see updated? And you guys gave me specific suggestions, and I passed all of those on. And some of them they said were good. For example, an espionage skill line. One of you said that would be really cool. One that focuses on, seeing through walls, or, being able to pick open doors, to get into keeps and things. And it's like, that was a cool idea. People thought that was a cool idea as well. A lot of you guys had suggested to a mount speed increase when you're affected by battle spirit. That was a good idea as well. So if you have ideas, I will pass them onwards. I will use whatever clout I have to push onwards these good ideas, but also fill the forums with these good ideas, because I want your guys' good ideas to be out there as well too, because I want to see the best product of Cyrodiil that we can get. Another update that I wanted to point out from Zos Kevin, and he's responding to how they handle feedback, and this is his response. He just wants to chime in here. We've been chatting about internally setting up more plans for surveys and more ways to get player feedback, and that Matt will touch on this to some degrees in his letter, but wanted to mention this as well. We've also started with some stuff like guild surveys we had a few months ago, but we are going to ramp up requested communication methods in 2025. It will make adjustments throughout the year. Obviously, this goes without saying, but we don't want you to just trust what we say. We want you just to keep us accountable. When we roll these things out, please let us know what is working on. Like Gita mentioned, please look forward to Matt's letter on December 17th. So, interesting points here. The key highlights and takeaways that I also want to mention from this too, and there'll be people in the comments because I'm going to make this statement. Let me start by giving you some stats. I have 68,000 unique viewers on YouTube for the month of December. So, in the last 28 days, which I guess technically also encompasses November, 68,000 unique people have watched my YouTube channel, right? I remember doing a poll where 40% of my audience had never completed a dungeon. Not one. Not Spindle Clutch, not Fang Lair, nothing. So when people say, oh, this has never been requested for, I think it's really hard to capture what people think on an MMO, because you've got solo players. Like, I always tell this as an example. When I first got into the Elder Scrolls Online, I'd never played an MMO before, ever. Not World of Warcraft. I think it may be Wizard 101 if you consider that an MMO, but that's really just more of a pay-to-win cash grab, honestly. I never played an MMO, but I played Skyrim and Oblivion. I thought this is like the continuation of Skyrim and Oblivion. I want to see the rest of the Elder Scrolls universe. My brother, who went from World of Warcraft to ESO, only cared about PvP, and then he was like, well, I just want to get every rare achievement in the game. Whereas as I wanted to explore, do the quest things, and then got into the other types of content, he came to the game with the mindset of like, I've seen the Cyrodiil videos, I want to get involved in that, and then he joined for that reason. And then the interesting thing is once you start playing the game, is you start to shift. Well, okay, I enjoyed this, now I enjoy this. For example, I used to love PvE 4-man achievements. I used to love it. Now I enjoy PvP content significantly more. But that also goes to show that people join the game for different reasons. And as somebody with an audience who gets to ask that audience questions, I always am surprised by the outcome of the question that I asked. For example, did you know that the Dominion is the most popular alliance of my followers? It's crazy. And it's not even close. It's like 7% higher than the Ebonheart Pact and or the Daggerfall Covenant, which is ridiculous to me. And there was one more, but I'm just going to summarize it because there's quite a few comments that the developers have all been making recently, and I'm trying to find specifically, but basically, it was in the forum regarding Overland content. Now, I plan to do a whole video on how I would update Overland content, because for those of you who watch my live stream where I turned ESO into Skyrim, I turned off all my overlays, made myself weaker, made it to where I didn't even like auto lock on. There was no highlight to creatures and things. And the game felt more like Skyrim, and it looks beautiful in 4K. It's an absolutely beautiful game. So my suggestion on Overland content, because I know that there's been all these discussions on like a veteran Overland versus a normal Overland, and then that causing new players to maybe be confused, and like what bonuses would you give for veteran Overland content and stuff. My solution is just give people a debuff that takes away their overlays, gives them like double gold, double overland drops, double quest rewards, whatever. And then, when you're in these fights, you have halved the resources for overland stuff, and it'll probably feel a lot more competitive. Because ever since ESO made, I think, one of the better decisions of taking away levels for overland content, because it, then gave people a reason to like, hey, if you want to go to the gold road, you can just go there. You don't have to be like CP 160 without getting rinsed. With level scaling, it has kind of taken away a lot of difficulty, and I do love difficulty. I kind of miss it a little bit from when we used to have it, because I used to love going to those harder zones and feeling like I was in more danger. Now you just feel like you're a walking god, which, to be fair, like all the things that you've done as a character probably warrant that. I mean, you've killed like dragons, and you've beaten Daedric lords, multiple of them, multiple times. So like, you should be a god, but also it would be nice to have more of a difficulty scale. And so that's where I think like giving people who want to turn it on a debuff to whatever zone that they want to go into is the solution. But I plan to make a full video breakdown on what I would change and tweak in that regard. But the thing that they had said in that forum post was that they're listening to feedback, and they're still looking at ways to update Overland content to make it more enjoyable and more difficult. Because, wandering bosses were an addition, to kind of add more like difficulty and risk the overworld. When you go to like zones like Necrom, it definitely feels more difficult, with all the wandering things that can attack you and whatnot. But I think that instead of like making certain zones harder, they should make all zones harder, because some of the stories are really cool. And then, I don't want to spoil any of the endings, but like you literally get to box like certain Daedra, and I could probably box them on my level like 10, which is fine, because like you want to be able to complete the quests on a level 10. But like I want it to be a hard fight. I want it to be like, I am fighting that Daedric prince, on like level footing, or the footing of like, I'm a weak person who's a human. Granted, I'm soulless, or technically I've got it back, but I want to feel that difficulty in that fight. And then you might say, well, Jake, why don't you just do dungeons and trials and stuff? Who's to say you couldn't do a similar hardcore mode? I'm not saying hardcore like your character gets deleted if you die, but like who's to say you couldn't go through and try to complete dungeons and trials with the stat reduction? Maybe 50% is too much, but it could add a whole new extra layer of difficulty by permanently taking away like 25% of all your stats, or maybe just certain stats, to where you can't overblow yourself too much. I think that would be a perfectly fun way, to have like a hardcore mode, where you could still see like your health bar, or maybe even they take the health bar away, and it's just like in some of the other hardcore modes where like there's more red on the sides, and it just gets bigger and bigger, as your character gets closer to death. And then maybe some visual cues, for magicka or stamina when you get low. I think that would be really cool. But I don't know if I'm in the minority on that. That was just my idea, so let me know in the comments. But everyone, thank you guys so much again for watching. This has been a much more opinionated episode, so thank you for sticking around to the end. I know that there are some people who are going to comment and they're going to disagree, and I just want to say, disagreement, totally okay. I actually think that disagreement is one of the most important ways to find the best solution forward. I believe that wholeheartedly. A lot of my job required me to go to court very often. There would be conversations about what's best between multiple different parties, and then somebody would rule on it. And oftentimes they would take points and recommendations from different people and kind of put it into one conglomeration together. So I love discussion. As long as it doesn't just turn into bashing, which, hey, it's okay if you want to do that too. I won't be too upset in the comments below, but I will try to comment on as many as possible. So thank you guys so much again for watching. As always, we're doing our 3 giveaway drawings. All you have to do to enter is leave a comment in the comments below, which a lot of you probably will if you've watched all the way to the end. Second thing is just make sure you subscribe/follow on Twitch and Twitter. And the third thing is look for a hidden word be flashed upon the screen. If you're the first person to comment that word, you will win. Thank you guys one last time, and I'll catch you guys later. Bye, guys.
You better remember to like and subscribe to Jakeclips. Or you should. I might have to pluck your eyes if you don't. Or, better yet, I'll skip rope with your entrails. Do it now. Subscribe. Ta-ta. Off with you.